Let's take a look at how we might apply these principles. Suppose that someone proposed a property qualification for voting. Right? We had that in the early United States. Of course, we also had racist and sexist qualifications as well. But suppose someone said, look, people who don't have a certain amount of money, right, shouldn't be able to vote. And someone says, well, wait, why is that the case? And they give the standard reasons. Well, having earned a certain amount of money, especially in a society with opportunity, indicates a certain amount of organization and responsibility. Okay, there's reasons to think that when a person has more at stake with policies and has property to take care of, they'll be more careful for the future. You go through the different reasons. Well, suppose that this were to someone showed, and look, hey, in terms of the difference principle, this would raise the level of the least well off. Right? Well, we've got a problem here. Right? The obvious problem is this seems inconsistent with the principle of liberty. Okay, so the principle of liberty is going to tell us, no, everyone has to have a certain amount of access to political participation, including voting. Okay, so a property qualification for voting, right, is not going to be acceptable. Okay. So that's an example, right, of how you'd apply the principle. Right? Someone could come along and say, hey, in terms of the difference principle, we should have a property qualification for voting. And someone could say, well, look, even if your economic calculations are right, that would conflict with the liberty principle. Now, suppose someone wants to raise the minimum wage. Okay, so we go down the list. We'd say, okay, does that conflict with the principle of equal liberty? Well, someone could talk about the liberty to pay whatever wage you want. But that's not something that everyone has access to, right? That's something that the people who are able to employ others, in a position to employ others, have, and others don't. Right? So that's not going to work. Right? That's not going to count as a violation of the principle of liberty. Well, what about fair and equal opportunity? Well, there's no obvious problem here. Right? It doesn't have to do with who gets access to what kinds of jobs. It may affect what kinds of jobs are available. But given that certain positions and access to inequality is out there, right, it doesn't restrict anyone who has the talent and motivation from achieving it. So then we look at the difference principle and we say, okay, would raising the minimum wage of all our available options, for now we'll just say keeping it where it is or raising it, right, which one would maximize the level of the least well off? Well, then we have to ask some economic questions, right? Of course, at first glance, raising the minimum wage, right, well, it'll raise the level of the least paid workers. Right? And so that will be, right, seems good. But we have to ask questions about the ripple effects. Okay, will it make it difficult for some businesses to continue operating? Will it lead them to hire fewer people and raise the unemployment rate, etc.? Okay, so or will it raise prices to the extent that even though people on the bottom have more money, right, they actually can't buy as many goods with those money. So they actually don't have as much access to basic goods as they had before. Right? That's the kind of question we have to ask. Okay? Looking at all the ripple effects of this policy, which one would produce the best consequences? And if it turns out that raising the minimum wage isn't going to significantly affect inflation, right? It's not going to significantly increase unemployment, etc., right? Well, then the difference principle would seem to tell us that we should go with the higher minimum wage, assuming for the sake of argument that this question is part of the basic structure. Right? So those are some examples of how you would apply the three principles to certain sorts of political and economic questions.